Good morning. This morning, you and Paul and I are joined by Ellen Teague, Joe Sidlica and Mary Jo McElroy. And it's really lovely to have you with us here in Govan and Lindhouse Church. Ellen, you're the driver of the Catholic Environmental Network. Could you tell us a little bit about that, please?
Ooh, a driver. I'm not sure that's how to describe myself. I've been active in Catholic circles on the environment for a long time. I was a lay missionary in northern Nigeria in 1980 when I first got married, and desertification was clearly related to poverty, and at that time I was really involved with the development network. They didn't really bother with the environment. But we had farmers from Niger would come down to Kaduna, to my city, and they'd guard houses. They couldn't make a living on the land anymore. And we had an elderly man in our compound, so this is, 40 years ago, who said when he first moved to Kaduna, it was a forest. It was unbelievable. Just in one person's lifetime, it changed. So when I came back from Nigeria, I went to work for CAFOD for 8 years. And the 1984 Ethiopia famine, just looking at the queues of people at feeding stations, the camps, to my mind, it was clearly linked with environment. If there's a fruitful environment, people can, go into a forest, pick fruit off the trees and so on. But when the environment is really barren, that's when famine happens. So we started having discussions at CAFOD about, isn't this linked to environment? And I remember I had a working group at CAFOD, and I brought in somebody from Friends of the Earth, and CAFOD was the first agency to run a campaign. It was called Renewing the Earth, on development and environment. And originally there was quite a lot of opposition. Church leaders didn't get behind it at all. They thought, but people are more important than trees, and you had to spend time. And we had a theologian, Sean McDonough, who had just written a book, To Care for the Earth. And he based it on his experience in the Philippines, where there was massive desertification, mining companies were moving in, and indigenous people were who had lived there for thousands of years, like the Subanan tribal people. They had liturgies appreciating the soil, appreciating earthworms and so on. He put all that in the book. And when I read it, I thought, this is absolutely right. So CAFOD also got into creation-centred spirituality, and I would say it changed my life.
So it sounds as though, Ellen, your experience in Africa and Sean McDonough's experience in Asia are first-hand experiences of the change in just a lifetime, so people can work the land, and the land is fruitful, to no longer being so. So you must have quite an understanding and appreciation of Sean McDonough's thinking.
Well, I worked then with Sean McDonough. He was an advisor to CAFOD, and I accompanied him to many of his talks. And he was due to be here actually, but he's had some deaths in the family, so he couldn't come after all. But in the vigil at the weekend, he has provided a video segment for that. But he felt at that time that climate change actually was an issue, and that wasn't mentioned by anybody else. So it's in his first book, written about 1984.
Really?
And at CAFOD, we couldn't say much about it because it wasn't scientifically proven. But I felt in my heart, I've seen this in Africa. And the missionaries would say, people there the Sahara's moving south. So
there wasn't the scientific evidence then, but
no, the first IPCC report was 1988. So CAFOD's director, we had long discussions that when I did study materials, he felt there's plenty of other things, water, the industrial agriculture, which seems to be exacerbating the destruction of the land. But he said climate change, let's wait till if it's proven. There was a lot of scepticism, it would be proven.
And we can't really doubt the scientists now. People can sometimes...
They were doubted then, that first report, because Sir John Horton, who did a lot of work with Green Christian, I'm sure, he's dead now, and was head of the Met Office. Operation Noah, he spoke at the founding of Operation Noah in Coventry, whatever year that was, and he said quite often people would say to him, look, that can't be right, and I'm the head of the Met Office, I know what I'm talking about, the IPCC knows, but he felt it was an uphill struggle. He told me, I was on shared a platform with
It
him
was
several
an
times.
inconvenient truth, as I think I
That's
called
right.
it, wasn't it?
But he did an article, what really he felt took off, he did an article in one of the main papers about we should be on a war footing, but in relation to climate change. And funny enough, that was picked up by Prince Charles at his opening talk here.
Yeah.
But Sir John Horton was saying that all along, we need to be on an emergency crisis footing now. And at that time, the film The Day After Tomorrow came out, and I remember saying to him, a lot of people feel that's completely far-fetched. He said, well, the thing is, when you mess with the atmosphere, we don't know. We just mustn't mess with the atmosphere. It could happen, but he said no scientist it will definitely happen, but we're putting the conditions there for severe weather and so on. But sudden changes, dramatic changes, it is a possibility.
And now we realise that he was right, don't we?
Yeah.
That we're seeing it.
He spent his whole retirement really working on that. So my job, as I saw it, has always been to try and persuade the Catholic constituency to get on board, because I really noticed with other churches they were much more willing to get on board than our church was.
Now, what do you see in the Catholic Church? In what ways is the Church picking up this urgency and acting, and what signs of hope is the Church?
Well, the big change in the Church had some history of involvement. I mean, under Pope John Paul II, one of the World Peace Day messages was peace with God, peace with all of creation in 1990. But then it wasn't mentioned again in a World Peace Day message. Pope Benedict in Australia, the World Youth Day in Australia, he gave several talks. He was talking to young people. The environment clearly featured. But it's really Pope Francis, and particularly the publication of Laudato Si, and the instruction from the Vatican that, you know, concern for creation-centered theology is now part of the teaching of the Church. It's an encyclical, and bishops were instructed to run training events, to get things going in their diocese. So it was published in June of 2015. By October, I was doing diocesan talks. The first one was Liverpool, and I remember another one, Northampton, Nottingham, where they had annual days, they made the theme the environment. But I might say several bishops say to me, we've never been trained for this. One bishop said to me, what's he going on about? This isn't part of what I've ever done, is it? It was really new to them.
As you say, Laudato Si was so instrumental. There were such strong themes in it, weren't there? The theme that was particularly strong for me was the voice of the poor.
That's right. Well, linking the two, and the voice of the poor, the voice of the earth. Yeah. Because it used, when I was at CAFOD, there was still a strong theme of, we're concerned about people. Environmentalists care about trees and rabbits and polar bears, and they didn't come together. But Sean was saying, and Pope Francis with his Latin America experience was saying, there was a big conference in Latin America, while he was still there in Aparecida, and he had a conversion experience himself where bishops from the Amazon and indigenous people were saying, our lives are being ruined by the destruction of the rainforest, and it's not sustainable into the future.
And as the Church listens, will others listen as well? I think.
Well, certainly congregations. I think the church leadership is vastly better. I mean, we've met the head bishop for England and Wales and the environments. John Arnold is here. We met him at the Faiths talk. He's apparently, Joe was just saying, I've been doing a blog, he's been following the blog. We're coming together with the bishops a lot more.
Well, the Church has issued a statement.
Yes, and now
every parish has to vet their carbon footprint, every single parish, every community, every school, every church.
Yes, making them do it is quite another thing.
Yeah, it's making them do it, isn't it?
But it's building up, but it's a bit like the other actions, it's building up slowly. Yeah. So I would compliment the Church for getting there and so on. But it could have been here 30 years if they'd listened to Sir John Horton. We could have been here at an earlier stage. But let's go from where we are now. We now have a bishop for the environment. He has put very good models in place in his own diocese. He's set up a Laudato Si centre. Good. And they're educating the children of that diocese in the environment, appreciating
Yes,
bees
right.
and
And
that
do you
sort of
think
thing.
all this is informed by creation theology, by more of a focus? On
Definitely,
in-
the spirituality is so
spirituality,
important.
Yes.
Because in Catholic teaching, I mean, Sean said it, you know, I last heard him speak about a week ago at the Tablet had a festival on this,
Right.
and he was saying he'd been at a funeral that morning, and the prayer at the end
Right.
was the Salve Regina,
Right.
which a lot of older
Yes.
people say, and
Yes.
there's a line in that, mourning and weeping in this vale of tears,
Yeah.
that this life on earth is a vale of tears.
Yeah.
Our real focus is heaven
Yeah.
and after death.
Yeah.
And he's saying that is not the way we should be viewing this earth. It's not a vale of tears, it's a beautiful, beautiful planet.
It
We
can
must
be,
value.
can't it? Yes.
Valuing creation is,
Yeah, that's so important.
is
isn't
part
it?
of the
It's the way in
problem.
which we relate.
you know,
to
a
it.
tree in a forest is worth nothing to some people. You chop it down, you sell the wood, then it's valuable.
Quite.
Um,
And the way in which we relate to creation tells us how much value we're giving to it.
yeah, and also if you I mean, what Pope Francis is very strong, if you're willing to discard creation, you're willing to discard poor people as
Exactly.
well, anybody
He is
who
very
stands
strong
in the
on
way.
that. He really is indeed. And are more creation stories getting into the tablet, more relevant environmental?
Well, they're certainly getting onto Joe's
Joe,
website.
how are you managing to get stories out there, environmental stories?
I think I was looking at the news that I've done the last few weeks, and probably more than half of the out of the environment every day.
That's
now.
good to hear.
Yeah.
Good.
And Joe's here.
Yeah, being
And
here,
peace,
you're
and
absolutely
peace,
you're
and there's the
being here.
connection between armaments and war, and
There is hugely, isn't
as
there?
well, which is usually gets swept under the
And were you
carpet.
present at the protests and all the arms
Oh yeah,
fair that was in London?
yeah, oh yes,
recently?
yeah, I go
Yes.
every year.
Yes, you made a presence, yeah.
Yeah.
Terrible that that's.
And if we
going on,
can't be there, we
absolutely.
write about them. There was one in Liverpool, you know, more after the one in London, and so, you know, I would do an article.
You made his comments, good.
Yeah, we tried to get it elsewhere as well. But Joe has covered, like the protest in Wrexham that the diocese hasn't divested. That's up on Joe's website with a picture. Because people know that's a good place to get it
so
up.
then they'll know that this diocese still has not divested from
Well,
fossil
some you
fuels.
haven't. Still, 8 have.
There
Eight
is
have out of 22.
Out of 22.
Well, that's 8. I mean, we
Okay,
try and look at it
exactly.
positively, don't
And
we?
8 big ones.
Hopefully.
8 big ones. So yeah.
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 Mary
Well, that's
Jo?
it in writing. I would certainly, I think we both feel we've got to be positive about, you know, but certainly Sean McDonough finds it hard to let go of the fact that the church, you know, it could have been where it is now, it could have been there 30 years ago. Had there been even one bishop who
John been listened to.
had been listened to,
Yeah.
And so could we. I mean, we drive cars,
We do.
wear things made out of plastic, out of animal skin, you know, eat dead animals. I mean, you know.
We challenge
Fly.
ourselves, don't we?
Yes,
We try to
yeah.
hold accountability.
Exactly.
But there are no easy answers. I mean, we have an electric car at home, but I've been doing workshops on the mining of lithium, which is used in electric cars. And like the Chileans, you know, they don't want to be sacrificed communities
No,
in the
they
production of
don't.
lithium.
No.
There are really no easy answers. But I think the focus of this conference is the really big advocacy picture. Lifestyle is important, and the church is stronger on that than it is on.
And the advocacy.
Say advocacy
the
and
voices are
education.
listened to that need to be heard.
Yeah.
Definitely.
For example, stop funding fossil fuel companies.
Yes.
That the banks are still doing that. I mean, the head of BP is
A
here,
lot of
I
banks
see.
are.
He's here still
Oh,
lobbying
no.
that he feels BP can be part of the solution. And if you look at their
but
website,
is
you
he
think,
going
gosh,
to
they're
walk?
greener than Greenpeace. That you know, the greenwash is incredibly persuasive to
It
some
is
people.
greenwash. I was going to say, are they really walking the walk or just talking the talk?
No, they're not. They would have to be prevented. And then the link, you know, say in Madagascar, the link with, you know, the Cabo Delgado region, you know, all the militarisation there and the displacement of the violence, that is all linked to oil, exploration for oil off the coast. They want the people out of the way, and this happens in Congo as well. They want them out of the way so they can get on with their business with mining, and they militarise.
And with mining, as you said earlier, technology is not on our side yet. So the mining of lithium is having an awful.
Well, I was talking about
environmental
fossil
impact.
fuels and that,
But yeah,
but lithium
But-
mining and
but even though for electric cars we think this is
Yeah.
going green, but actually the process and the technology isn't yet green.
No.
but even the London Mining Network would say we have to review even like solar panels. The number of minerals that go into solar panels.
Yes, and
It's
we were
quite
talking about
incredible.
the disposal of solar panels when I think we were earlier in the week. That's incredibly.
And you know, phones, cold training phones, and
Yes.
I mean, I've got my
right.
laptop in my bag.
Yeah.
You know, people say, well, are you saying we should go back to living like, you know, Neanderthal?
I think we need. I
communities.
heard it on the train.
But I'll tell you something, we could be forced into it at some stage.
I heard a conversation on the train going back one evening to Edinburgh this week from a delegate who's from Senegal, and he was saying that we need to find the right balance between all the technology and a simpler, lighter way of treading the earth and living. Talking of living more simply, and coming back to the church and what the church is doing, we've talked here quite a lot this week about eco-church and eco-congregations, and I think you have, is it simple space?
Live simply.
Live simply.
You're recording this, I better be careful what I say. Eco-congregation, you know, the first thing it has is an environmental audit, and there's quite a lot of paperwork and discussion.
It's just Arosha Eco-Church.
Yes, and the feeling was that Catholic parishes were not picking up on eco-congregation, and CAFL did some research and found that a lot of parish priests felt there was too much paperwork. The priest had to be involved, so they dumbed it down, I'm afraid to say, to live simply, and which has been a much bigger pickup. There are now but just still 100 parishes compared to 5,000 with eco-congregation. So 100 parishes, and I'm an assessor, I've assessed about 8 parishes and 2 schools, and it is fantastic for those who are doing it.
Incentives?
And it still has, you know...
It has that sort of credibility if
no, well, there's plenty of meat to it still, but it is simpler than the eco-congregation.
And does it cover similar areas, so including
Yes,
buildings and lands and
it
worships
does.
and lifestyle?
But they choose what they do. Some churches are stronger on transport, others are stronger on energy. You know, it varies, but they have to do 3 substantial actions and then 3, you know, perhaps not so big, you know. But I've seen churches with solar panels on the roof. There's the parish in Winchester has ground source heating.
Does it?
I've only met the Baptist church in Harrow where I live. So these things are coming in.
Yes.
Redesigning churches to have better insulation, that sort of thing.
Yes.
But very practical, you know, simple things. For example, in the winter, doing the daily mass in a side chapel and just heating that rather than the whole church.
And it is those simple things.
There are lots of simple things.
Little changes can make.
And eco-congregation advisors say in the winter that if you're going to have evening meetings, have them on Mondays and Fridays, so then you're heating the church for a long weekend rather than heating it or during the week.
Thinking, isn't it?
So tips
and
like
it's those
that.
Small changes that can lead to big differences.
Yeah, and I've seen, you know, the very first Live Simply parish, they got the little scouts in the parish and Son of Beavers involved in recycling.
Yeah, yes. So do they have a website? Could we all access
Live
that?
Simply it's called. Live Simply website, they list there. And not every diocese has Live Simply parishes, but certainly most do.
That's really good to know. Am I right that this week, coming back to this week, you've been able to access the Blue Zone, and who have you met there?
Well,
we're journalists. Of course we go to the Blue Zone every day. That's where we work.
What's it like in there?
Who did we meet? We didn't meet Biden or Johnson or any of those because of security. We were beside them, but we were in a different area, a vast area, you know, with like hundreds of journalists. We had our own desk, and you know, and we had like the Guardian was over here, and the Washington Post was over.
And I'm just getting messages not all from people who say, "Where are you?"
You
you sit in a room with about 1,000 desks,
Yeah.
and there's a big screen.
The Daily
Yeah,
Express is
I
opposite,
think
and
they've
Yeah.
shown that room on there.
Yeah, it's a nightmare.
Oh.
Yeah.
I quite enjoy it, but you know, we could have been
Rather
sitting at our
evenly.
accommodation watching it online, and that's why in fact yesterday we didn't go, and I followed it just as well.
Did you
But we
really?
will go back to the Blue Zone.
Okay.
But there were exhibitions. For example, the Eden Project had an exhibition, and just sort of circulating with, you know, with people all focused on that one issue, I found very invigorating.
Oh,
It would have been.
Extremely tiring, but very invigorating.
Yeah.
And they've made efforts, you know, like to have renewable cups, you know.
Yeah.
There are special bins, which I hadn't noticed, but Joe did.
And if you had been able to talk to anybody in there, who would you most like to talk to, and what message would you like to give them?
It would be our own government, actually, and
Yeah.
joining the lobby, you know, forget, you know, new coal-fired power stations, forget new oil exploration, stop
Walk the
giving
walk.
money to fossil fuels, you know, make the banks stop funding fossil fuels. That's those sort of big
Do it
areas.
now, don't put it off. Don't.
That's right. There's a lot of greenwash, you know,
And
from politicians as well.
Yeah.
But I did sense, and I said it in my first blog, that I sense Boris Johnson to be more sincere than I've ever heard him, because I think because of the conference he's had to do a lot of research, and of course the more you learn, the more you think, gosh, you know, and he's got a young son.
I also have a similar sense, and I know lots of people like to believe that he isn't sincere, but I like to give. I feel he is as well.
I feel he's more sincere than I've ever heard him before.
Yes.
To the extent that it was
Time will
almost, you
tell,
know,
yes.
we should all be really alarmed about this, and
He gave very good speeches.
he did.
Yeah.
But it seemed to be quite from the heart, I thought, more than ever
Yes.
Has he
before.
got one? But,
So I'm really glad that you threw it here. And if Sean McDonough had been here, what do you think he would have said?
Well, he has been for years. He's a prophet, Sean,
Yes.
stressing the urgency. But even when we thought the worst impacts were going to be, you know, 100 years from now,
Yes.
even then he said, but we can't leave it to them, you know. We can't. I mean, I've heard many people say. I heard government ministers years ago say, "Don't worry about the future. You know, we'll invent like a vacuum cleaner to hoover, you know, CFCs or what. I mean, he got his CFCs and his greenhouse gases confused. We can hoover them out. The technology will fix the problem." Now, Sean was saying all along, we can't rely on technology. And Pope Francis has been very strong on that.
Yes.
There won't be a technological fix.
No.
And it's a big theme of this conference, nature-based solutions.
Yes.
And that was a big theme in the Eden Project display.
And as well as the Eden Project being in there, was the Centre for Alternative Technology, who are the...
I didn't see it, but I've got a feeling that would probably be in the green zone.
Oh, right, yeah.
We just saw
Bit
some of the
smaller,
displays in the blue zone.
Yes,
There were lots of
yes.
country presentations, you know, rather than... But we're going to the green zone this afternoon, and I think that will be
Tell
more...
us what you see. Yes.
The big NGOs will be there.
Yeah.
Sure, anybody can go in the green zone, can't
Anyone
They
can
can.
get a pass, but you need a pass, and
Yeah.
they're very
Or you'll get in
hard
them.
to come by.
Oh,
People from the blue zone can get in easily, but it's
Yeah,
not
that's
just a
what I
pass,
was-
and you can only get 3
that's a
days.
shame.
We'll be disappointed if we don't get in.
I will stop this recording. Thank you.